Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, your ultimate ride into the world of motorcycles. Visit cyclesworldwide.com where we offer a completely free marketplace for everything motorcycles. Join our One Gang community where you can connect, share info, and swap stories with riders from all over the world. Join for free at cyclesworldwide.com and be a part of the One Gang community right now.
From the pages of Hot Bike Magazine to the boardroom of S&S Cycle, this man's fingerprints are on every corner of the American V-twin world. Howard Kelly isn't just part of the motorcycle industry, he's helped shape it. From marketing powerhouses to bringing brands back to life, this is a rare inside look at what really goes on behind the curtain.
Cool, and I'm moving along at a pretty good clip and feeling like, yeah, I'm good. And 3 motorcycles passed me so fast going through one of the turns that I thought my bike broke.
Jeez.
And I'm like, what? And I learned very quickly that I might have been really fast in Philadelphia, but I really wasn't that fast in California.
What's going on, One Gang? We've got an awesome show for you here today. We got Howard Kelly, who's the Vice President of Marketing from S&S Cycle. Thank you so much, Howard, for joining us out of your crazy busy schedule. And welcome on to the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Definitely. We're excited to have you. This is going to be a fun one, getting some good behind the scenes and insights that we're dying for. So how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? Brothers, sisters, give us the full background of a young Howard.
Young Howard grew up in Philadelphia. 2 younger brothers, first mini bike at 8 years old, and
Nice.
Stuck with it since then. I lived in an area of Philadelphia where there were woods, as we called them there. West Coast, they don't call it the woods, they call it forests and things like that, but they were the woods, and we had trails there, and I rode mini bikes until I got my first motorcycle, which was a 1970 Honda CT70H. And the H meant that it had the clutch instead of the automatic transmission, and everything went from there.
You want to hear something crazy? Most of the guys from our era, right, growing up, almost every single person's first bigger bike outside of like a little mini bike was a CT70. It's amazing how many people started out on that model.
They were everywhere, and they were
Everywhere.
dirt buy used, and that's what I did. My dad bought it, and we painted it and put a new seat cover on it, and that was my first kickstart motorcycle.
That's cool. So what was your earlier work after school and before Hot Bike Magazine?
Let's see. Out of school, while I was in college, I sold tires at a discount tire. Well, during high school, I mounted tires on cars at a giant tire store right at the border of New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Then when I got into college, I sold tires, and I learned everything in the world about people and sales and marketing and all of that doing that, because discount tires, right? There was a tire store across the highway from us, and we would advertise tires, whatever, $32.90. And across the street, they would advertise the same tire for $32.80. And people would come in and hit me with their ad from the competitor's ad and say, "Are you going to match that price?" It was 10 cents, right?
Right.
I don't know, maybe what about splitting the difference? And
That's how it was.
But people were willing to grind for 40 cents, right? And it made me understand the consumer mindset very early on. I did that. I became like general manager of like 13 tire stores, and
Wow.
But I had this inside of me. I thought I was the best motorcycle rider that there was, because in Philadelphia, I was pretty good. And when you got outside of Philadelphia, there were a couple roads with turns, canyons, not really. And when I would go riding with people, I was the fastest through there. So obviously I'm this great motorcycle rider. So I'm going to move to California and I'm going to get on a motorcycle magazine because I'm the best rider in the world, hands down. That's it.
What are you riding at this time, Howard?
At that moment, I had a Suzuki GS 750, which was the first of the 4-valve models. So, but in my, I can be faster than everybody, I sold that and I bought the ultimate drag race motorcycle, and I got a Suzuki GS 1100E, which was at the time the fastest production bike around. And I put a pipe on it and I flip on handlebars and I was ready to go race the world. So I moved to California and I'm no idea how I'm going to get a magazine job, but now I'm in California and I went out to Mulholland Highway to head up to the Rock store because I read about the Rock store and all the magazines that I was going to work for. And the Rock store was the cool place that all the bikes hung out. And I'm riding down Mulholland Highway, which is pretty twisty. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. And I'm moving along at a pretty good clip and feeling like, yeah, I'm good. And 3 motorcycles passed me so fast going through one of the turns that I thought my bike broke.
Jeez.
And I'm like, what? And I learned very quickly that I might have been really fast in Philadelphia, but I really wasn't that fast in California.
Right.
Because these were people that grew up where all the really good roads and canyons were and all that stuff. And then I bumbled my way through. I had a couple different jobs out there, and one of the jobs, I worked in a really high-end automotive body shop in Beverly Hills.
Huh.
And we served clientele, Beverly Hills and Hollywood. I got to drive Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all kinds of cool stuff because I had to make sure the cars were good before we gave them back to the customers. Yep. One of the customers was the media buyer for NGK, the spark plug company.
Oh, yeah, NGK, of course.
Really great guy. We got along fantastically. He's like, why are you working in a body shop? I said, well, I really don't want to work in a body shop. What I want to do is work on a motorcycle magazine. He goes, well, I know the publishers of Cycle World and Motorcyclist.
Wow.
Why don't I connect you with them? Give me your resume.
Okay. Jeez.
Okay, I'll have to put one together and print it out and all that stuff. And because obviously it's way before you had a phone in your pocket and digital and all that. So I got him my resume and he sent it off to the publisher of Cycle World and Motorcyclist, who did what all good publishers do. They said, oh, this guy pays me a lot of money. I'm going to walk this resume down to the editor of the magazine and let them deal with it. And they walked my resume down to David Edwards at Cycle World and Mitch Boehm at Motorcyclist. And a couple days went by and I got a call from David Edwards, responsible because, publisher, guy that gets the money that keeps him working, said, make sure you talk to this guy. And David was very nice. And he called me up and he's like, hey, Howard, I saw your resume. It's great stuff. Came to me from the publisher, but we don't really have any openings right now. And because you don't have a journalism degree, I don't see you ever really being able to do this. And I'd rather be upfront with you and tell you that than have to chase after things. Well, thanks, David. I appreciate that. A couple days later, I get a call from Mitch. And Mitch is like, hey, do you live near our offices? And I'm like, yeah. He says, well, why don't you come in for lunch one day and we'll talk? Okay. I'm excited. I go and I meet Mitch and I go to lunch with all the guys on the motorcyclist staff. And in my brain, I'm going, they're going to offer me a job. This is going to be great. I'm going to ride all these motorcycles. And we come back from lunch and I talk to Mitch for a bit and he's like, what are you doing next weekend? And I said, anything you want. And he said,
right.
well, we're going to do some testing over the weekend, and we could use an extra body to help, get motorcycles place to place and be kind of background in some of the photos. I'm doing it. Okay, that's fine. He's like, well, no, just what do you need me to do? So I went and I did a photo shoot with the guys at Motorcyclists, and we went out and did some canyon shots, where I learned what it was like to do those photo shoots where you rode back and forth 1,000 times. And then we went out to the drag strip, and then we went out to Willow Springs, and it was this amazing weekend. Wow,
That's
this is
cool.
the coolest thing in the world.
For sure.
Got back, and Mitch goes, hey, everybody liked working with you. Everybody really likes you, but I don't have any editor positions right now. The only job I have, I wouldn't offer you because you're way too qualified for it. And I'm like, well, whatever it is, I'll take it. He goes, no, you don't want to do it. And I'm like, whatever it is, Mitch, I'll take it. And it turns out it was being the shop foreman, which is a joke, right? You get in a van and you drive to the manufacturers and you pick up bikes and you bring them back and you clean them up for the photo shoots and you do all the crap work.
Right.
And it paid so poorly, but I took it anyway, that I had to teach the motorcycle safety program on the weekends to ultimately make enough money every month to cover my rent.
Wow.
It was but I wanted it, right?
To get your foot in the door, man. You did what you had to.
And then they gave me a 1-page bike test to write. And I wrote it and everybody liked it. And then every time a Harley came in, the guys would go, why don't we let Howard do that? He likes Harleys. Which led to Hot Rod Harleys being started at Peterson, which was a company that owned Motorcyclists. And I got asked to be the feature editor there.
Nice.
And I took that in a heartbeat because instead of washing motorcycles, I got to actually be the feature editor. And a little known thing, and I'll brag on this to myself and then I'll shut up for a bit.
Keep talking.
I wanted to turn Hot Rod Harleys into a motorcycle magazine.
Mm.
And Frank Keisler, who was the editor, who was my mentor and all of that, understood what I meant by that. And I wanted to put road tests in and riding and evaluations of things to make riding more functional for a person with a Harley. So if you were to go back in the history of Harley-based motorcycle magazines, riding came about, shots of people riding their bikes that are custom or road tests of bikes about that I started working at Hot Rod Harley. And then I said, well, but people want to ride and people should ride and bikes should ride if we're going to photograph them. And Frank agreed, and we kind of changed the format of the magazine moving forward.
Wow.
So,
That's crazy. So is that how Hot Bike was created?
no, Hot Bike existed for me. But Hot Bike was very, very, very focused on Southern California stuff. And when I had the chance to become the editor, first thing I did was say, okay, every bike we shoot is going to be shot outside. No studio stuff, because studio stuff says the bike is a trailer queen and it doesn't run.
Mm.
Right.
So we're going to shoot bike outside and the bike has to be ridden. There has to be one photo of it moving because again, it was at the peak of Harley custom, and there were custom bikes rolling into shows with no flywheels in the engine cases.
Mm.
It was just, look at this and look at the fabrication. And there's nothing wrong with great fabrication, but I wanted real motorcycles in it.
Yeah.
So road tests and custom bikes riding and all of that was my contribution to Hot Bike,
Nice.
which ultimately led to Hot Bike becoming basically the hottest magazine. At that time, everybody wanted to be in Hot Bike.
That's cool, man.
Some of
That's
the
cool.
issues.
What year is this? Take us into
Hot
what
Bike
year
was-
this is.
For me, Hot Bike was like 95 to 04.
Okay, so 95 to 04. Wow, that's a pretty long. And also you did the Street Chopper too, right?
Yeah, we did Street Chopper. We brought it back a couple issues a year, then 4 issues a year, and then ultimately it got up to 12 inches a year during the peak of the chopper thing. And then I left and a couple people ran it, and then they ultimately shut that down about a year or two before they shut Hot Bike down.
What was that scene like from like 95 to 2004 in that world? Because you're right. I mean, most of the Harley stuff was coming from Hot Bike and a few other ones. Everything else was kind of more sport bikes and European bikes.
Back then, that was when Hollywood embraced Harleys. The Evo had come out in 85, and Harleys were no longer the bikes that leaped to mark their spot. And by 95, 94, 95, that was that time when you couldn't buy a Harley. There was a 2-year wait. And
waiting list. I remember.
The markup on it. And what that did, tying this to S&S, is it sparked an amazing opportunity for S&S to release complete engines. And remember the Evo was an 80-inch engine, and it 80 inches, and you can really work on one of those and get it up to like 80 horsepower, and that was a big deal.
Absolutely.
S&S walked in the door with the 96 cubic inch production engine, right? And it was like 100 horsepower, and it was the world. Oh my God, I'm going to build a bike with an S&S 96. And then S&S said, but wait, there's more. And they came out with the 107 and the 113 and the 124. And that gave birth to things like BMC choppers and Titan and Big Dog and American Iron Ore, Carefree cycles, and all those manufactured custom bikes that completely changed the motorcycle industry. Because prior to when they were released, and they were released because they could buy S&S engines, guys would buy a Harley after waiting 2 years, and then they would take it somewhere to get it customized, and it would take another year to get it back from that custom guy. Or you could walk into a showroom and pick out which fancy colored Big Dog or BMC or American Iron Horse that you wanted with custom paint and chrome wheels and all
big
that
motor
ready, and ride out of the showroom that day.
Hey, how did the S&S come about when Indian came back? Remember in the late 90s, early 2000s when Indian was putting out their bikes?
Yeah,
they were using all S&S motors.
When they were based in Gilroy.
Yep.
So, well, that was exactly it. They came to S&S and they said, hey, we need to buy some motors, just like Titan, Big Dog, whatever. And they committed to buying enough engines that when S&S did the casting, instead of casting S&S in the head, they casted the little Indian logo in it.
That's right.
And then it went a little further, and then they wanted it in a round shape. So the custom castings were made, and S&S built those engines for them.
Yeah, gotcha.
And it was just, every month or whatever, a truckload of engines would be on a tractor trailer and head off to Gilroy.
Man, that is wild. So
yeah, the custom world back then was crazy.
Pioneering Wild West.
mean, it's crazy the stuff that was being done and the reputations that people were getting for their custom bikes. And, again, everything is pre-internet, right? So magazines were a major influence in the industry, whether it was Hot Bike or American Iron or Pink Twin or whatever it was. Those magazines, everybody got them.
That's right.
Because how do you know what the new parts are? How do you know what the cool bike is? How do you know what news is going on? Right? It was such an important part of that culture.
Yeah.
And when your bike was on the cover of a magazine, that was it.
Right.
Like
you
walked into the grocery store, you walked into Barnes and Noble, you walked into somewhere, and there's your motorcycle right there on the front It was,
Yeah, and it brought guys like, you know, all the heavy hitters like the Nesses and the Perowitzes and all them, you know, from the local motorcycle shows. Now it brought them into everybody's living room where they can see the work that these guys were doing. I mean, you're absolutely right. What a influential era that was for that custom world.
What's up, One Gang? I used to think that if I spent big money on riding gear with a logo on the back, I was getting top quality. I gave Leather Up a shot. I wasn't sure at first, could I really get quality gear without spending a fortune? But after putting tens of thousands of miles on their jackets and vests, I had my answer. No busted zippers, no loose stitching, just solid, well-made gear that lasts. Leather Up carries trusted brands like Milwaukee Leather, Hot Leathers, and more, with gear for every rider and every budget. Plus, their customer service actually cares and picks up the phone, something rare these days. So do yourself a favor, check out leatherup.com. Whether you need jackets, vests, chaps, boots, helmets, or luggage, they've got you covered. And because you're part of the One Gang Worldwide family, use code CW20 at checkout for 20% off your entire order. Stop overpaying, gear up with Leather Up, and see the difference yourself.
and you just said something interesting about bringing them into the living room. When I got to Hot Bike, they used to use bikini girls on the cover. And the first thing I did was take that away.
Make it about the bike.
And the ad guys were like, what are you thinking? What do you mean? They're girls and motorcycles. They sells. And I'm like, hold on. How much are these bikes that we're featuring in the magazine these days? 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, $100,000 in some cases. Right. Do you suppose the people that can afford that are going to be allowed to put that magazine on their coffee table at home with their wife? Oh,
Well, kids.
right.
Yep.
And we took the girls off and the circulation increased
Wow. That's killer.
because we were reaching an audience that actually cared about the motorcycle, not a bunch of 18-year-old kids who wanted to see, but more importantly, girls in bikinis.
Yeah.
And it worked, and it changed a lot of perception of things too, because suddenly, you know, we were a serious magazine, which was how we ended up partnering with S&S on a couple major projects. At time, the president of S&S was Brett Smith, who was the grandson of George Smith. And I met Brett, and we got along really well, and we talked about a lot of things. And when they were going to release their 145 program, which they were celebrating their 45th anniversary, and they built 145 cubic inch motors.
I remember that.
124 was gigantic at that time. So 145, it was such a big motor, it required a special frame. And they picked 5 builders that each got 9 of them, 45 of them, 45th anniversary, 145 is all. And we featured all of that in Hot Bike, including a pull-out poster of the 5 bikes. They were all together in Daytona, and it was just a really cool thing. But we partnered with S&S through Hot Bike on that, which led to the S&S Hot Bike 124 shootout, which was another tour that S&S did, where they got 5 builders together to build their idea of a custom bike around that 124, knowing that all 5 of these bikes were going to go to a drag strip and race to see who was actually going to be the winner. And that generated so much excitement. Again, magazines were the source of information.
Floors.
And we were adding an element of something to it. The NHDRA added a class specific to S&S 124 engines back then, because they were so popular and so powerful, and they needed a place to race them. And it was that S&S hot bike project that kicked that off.
That's cool.
That is really cool. So you touched on it briefly back in that era. So hot bike was at the center of the custom movement. What stories or builds from that era specifically really stuck with you, and how did they shape your view of the industry moving forward?
There's a couple great things, but most important to understand during that period, we did 12 issues a year. That means 12 bikes got on the cover. We typically put 8 bikes in the magazine every issue. Sometimes we did 300-page issues, so there might be 10 bikes in there. Every year I had 12 best friends and 100 enemies, because the 12 guys that got on the cover were my best friend, and the 100 bikes that went in the magazine that didn't make the cover all had shit to say about me because I didn't put their bike on the cover, because back then everybody thought their custom bike was the best custom bike that had ever been built.
Right.
It was before we got to where we are now, where all the bikes look basically the same because everybody's using the same parts and just different paint to see if they can make them look different. But there was a number of things that we did in the magazine that generated some pretty interesting backlash and stories and whatever. Mm-hmm. We did a thing with Jesse James where he had built a bike for a guy named Doug DeBerti, who ran DeBerti Wheel Company. And Doug DeBerti made wheels for trucks, cars, and motorcycles. And Jesse had built one of his El Diablo custom bikes, and it was very Jesse, very low slung, very sleek, all of that stuff. But it was mint green because that was Doug's color in his company. And Jesse and I were talking, and we were trying to figure out what would make an impactful cover with a not flamed, not wild colored kind of, what could we do with this mint green bike? And Jesse looks at me and goes, what if I jump it? And I was like, what do you mean jump it? He goes, I'm going to jump it. I'm like, okay, well then let's figure it out. And again, this was before the days of digital cameras. Everything was shot with film. So we went down to his shop in Long Beach, and we found the right place for the photos to be done, the right time of day for the lighting, because we needed more lighting than a mood cover. So we had a little earlier in the afternoon. And the way we did it, we had him ride by a few times for our main photographer, who was a guy by the name of Wes Allison. Probably one of the most talented vehicle photographers you'll ever come across. He still shoots for some of the car magazines. Wes figured out his spot, and Wes was in perfect alignment with where Jesse was going to come off of the wooden ramp that he had built. And he was going to capture the image just so the ramp was out of frame, but Jesse was in the air. We had that all figured out. And then Courtney Hallowell, who was one of the guys that used to be on the magazine with me that I wish didn't pass away because he was an amazing guy. He was the next best photographer. So he was laying on the ground right next to where Wes was laying on the ground. And then there was me, who was the worst photographer, but we all had our cameras, all had everything set up. So one of us was going to get that shot. And because Jesse was going to do it once and that was it. But he came by and he went off the jump and we got the photo of it. And there's a magazine cover. You can find it online. It's a mint green bike and Jesse's like that jumping it, and it's in the air. It's only like that high in the air,
still
but
in the air.
with an 8.
Yeah, man, that's a rigid frame jump, man. that
It was
hurts.
an $8,000 bike that he jumped in the air. So that cover generated a lot of, oh my gosh. Then we put a bike on the cover that, oh God, I can't think of his name now. It was, I'm spacing on this poor guy's name, and Mike Berg built. And Mike Berg was a really interesting guy, but he built this bike called the Minx. And it had hidden everything. It had internal throttle and internal brakes, and it was super compact and molded and beautiful bike. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. And we put that on the cover, and oh, that bike doesn't run, and oh, that bike doesn't ride. There's a picture of it riding right in the magazine, right? And that one generated a ton of conversation, but sparked things in the industry. We did a thing in Street Chopper. It was just a fun thing. And I remember it was, okay, I can do this. And we did a thing with Mike at BMC Choppers. And what he did for a jump, because suddenly a jump was a thing, Mike put one of his choppers in his 4-wheel drive pickup truck and down a jump, and he drove his 4-wheel drive pickup truck with a long chopper strapped down in the back and jumped that.
Good
Oh,
God.
wow.
Because it hadn't been done, because it would be something special, right? So,
It's funny
those-
how that snowballs like that, right? Like one guy does it, and the next one tries to outdo it.
And Mike and Jesse were really good friends, so it just made sense. So yeah, well, I can do, so I'm going to do, and it was so many things like that. But the really cool part of what the magazine used to do, and I miss that terribly for today's group of people, because Instagram and Facebook, they're really cool because you're seeing cool things right now. It lasts for about a minute,
Right.
If you're lucky.
and then another post pops up, and and Instagram's got this thing now where it automatically advances stuff. So even if you're looking at something, all of a sudden it jumps and it changes your feed to this stuff. Where a magazine, when you saw something cool in a magazine, or a bike that you saw in a magazine, or a part that you saw, you could rip that page out and stick it up on your workbench in the garage, and it became inspirational. I'm going to do that, or I'm going to build that, or I'm going to at least get that part on my bike.
Yeah.
Now you get people walking up, hey, look at this, and they're showing somebody something on their phone, and the first thing you're really doing, well, can I blow that up and actually see it? And that's gone. And that was what was so cool about the magazine.
Agreed.
It was so cool to go to Sturgis, or go to Daytona, or Laughlin, or Laconia, or any of those big rallies, and see these custom builders with a blow up of their cover in their booth, because it was such a
honor. Yeah. It was huge.
I was on the cover of this magazine or
That's
that
right.
magazine. And people don't get that now, and it's a shame. And like, there's basically one magazine out there, and that's Cycle Source, and Chris does a great job with it.
Yeah.
But without other magazines to compete against, it doesn't create the industry
I agree.
interesting.
Agree. Everything's instant. So 2004 comes, you left the magazine to join S&S, your first time stepping inside the machine, so to speak. What was that transition like for you from kind of storyteller to more of a brand builder now?
That part was easy. It was moving from California to Wisconsin that was the real challenge.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Good point. Yeah, especially in that time.
I was very blessed. Brett had brought me on at S&S, and Brett knew where he wanted to go with what I could lend to the company. So one of my very first projects, after getting acclimated and getting to know everybody, was putting together a series of service manuals for the S&S engines. So I don't remember now, it's 5 or 6 different service manuals on what to do if you had to work on your S&S P series or SH series or V or T, whatever. So I was really deep in that at the same time that S&S was developing the X-Wedge engine, which was going to be a story to be told, because that was a revolutionary new engine. So I was deep in that, but in the background from 04 we were working on the S&S 50th anniversary program. Even though we did the Shovelhead tour, we did the World Builders tour, we did a couple other things, it was all leading up to the 50th anniversary, because that was going to be a huge undertaking where
Right.
bringing 50 custom builders from around the world to La Crosse, Wisconsin. Right? You know, you think about somebody in Japan or in Germany or Italy, they're coming to a town of 50,000 people
Right.
with an airport that has 8 or 10 flights a day. You know, the closest major airport is Minneapolis Airport, and that's 2.5 hours away.
Wow.
So the logistics of shipping bikes and all of that stuff, we were working on that for years before it actually came to be.
Mhm.
And an unbelievable kudos to the guys that participated in that. Despite what everybody thinks, all 50 of those builders, all builders in every program we do, they bought their S&S engine. We didn't give 50 engines out, right? There's a commitment that you make financially even to be part of that S&S program, and you buy the engine. You know, I hear people talk, well, if they gave me an engine, I could build.
Nobody. Right.
They bought it because they wanted to be part of it. And you think about that. So now 50 people have made a commitment to buy engines, made a commitment to ship bikes or trailer bikes, depending on if they're coming from the States or not,
Right.
and gather in La Crosse. And the industry had never seen anything like that. There was never a time when the egos of 50 builders got put aside because we're part of this
That's a great
program.
point.
And
Right.
you know, I was very lucky. Motor Books International came to me and they asked me to write a book about the 50th anniversary. So I did that. And you can still find copies.
What is
of
that?
it
I had no idea you
online.
did that. Where is that? What's the title?
S&S Cycle presents something.
S&S. Cool.
S&S Cycle, Howard Kelly, S&S Presents, and a gray book cover will pop up.
All right.
50 custom builders or custom builders. It was a long time ago, but
Today's top custom
it's a really
bike
cool.
builders.
There
Got
you
it.
go.
All right, we'll link that. That's going to be a cool read. Thanks.
Yeah, man.
That's a beautiful book. And what's really neat about that, all the photography in that was done by Michael Lichter.
Oh, wow.
But what was really neat about it was Michael, we held the 50th anniversary in a giant tent in Fairgrounds at the La Crosse Center. Michael set up a mini photo studio inside that tent. And through the course of the 3 days of the Bike Fest, Michael shot all 50 of those bikes. So he was shooting 10, 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night for 3 days to get all 50 of them done.
Damn.
So like,
He's a super talent.
Yeah. And like, you know, I used the word blessed a few times, but I've really been blessed to interact with and work with some of the best people in the motorcycle industry.
Agreed.
I had everybody's phone number. I'll delve into a quick funny story.
That'd be awesome.
Back to more of your questions, but this is I love to tell people this story because it's true, but it's funny as all get out. And unfortunately, this year that just passed, we lost Jerry Covington from Covington Custom Cycles, and
Great guy.
Jerry was a dear friend, and I loved Jerry, but I more loved his wife Kathleen because she wasn't as annoying to me as Jerry was. Because every time I saw Jerry, he's like, "Howard, I got your next cover. I got your next," and I would see Jerry at all the major rallies. And almost always I would shoot one of his bikes because his bikes were beautiful. Absolutely. But Jerry always used to say to me, Howard, when are you going to come to Woodward and see the shop? And I would say, Jerry, Woodward, Oklahoma is in the middle of nowhere that I would ever go. So I would have to intentionally get on a plane and get to Woodward just to see you. And I'm doing this big magazine, I'm running, I see you at all the shows. I don't need to come to Woodward. But I'll tell you what, if you ever want to send a plane to pick me up, I will come to Woodward. And we laughed. And this was a running joke for years. One morning, I'm in the office at Hot Bike, and I get a phone call from Jerry. He's like, what are you doing Thursday? I said, I'm working, Jerry. I don't like you. I can't just take off all the time. He goes, well, do you want to come to Woodward? And I go, not unless you're sending a plane. He says, I am sending a plane.
Wow.
Excuse me? Yeah. Yep. 8:00 Thursday morning at the Orange County, whatever VIP private airport, which was right next to the John Wayne Airport. He said, there's going to be a plane waiting for you at 8:00. Bring your camera here.
So cool.
I've got some bikes I want you to see. Like, really? And he goes, yeah. And he literally faxed me an itinerary because, again, before internet stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, so I showed up. I walked in and I got on a Gulfstream something or other. I'm sorry. It was a Cessna jet. And I got on this Cessna jet and it was me and the two pilots. And they're like, hey, there's a whole bunch of snacks here. There's a bunch of beverages. Make yourself at home. TV, all this stuff. We'll be there in whatever amount of time. Okay. And I flew to Woodward, Oklahoma, walk off the plane, and there's Jerry and Kathleen wait to pick me up. And I'm like, well, how? Jerry's like, just relax. I go to the shop, and he's got these two choppers that he built. And he's like, I really want these in the magazine. And I'm like, I'm here. I can definitely pull that off. He goes, so now you were asking about the plane. And I go, yeah, I'm very much curious how you pulled a plane off because I know you didn't spend the money for this. And he goes, well, you're right. See these two bikes? Yeah. They're owned by the guys that rent that plane and a whole bunch of other planes. So they sent the jet so they could get their bikes in the magazine.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So
So the people who own the jet company bought the bikes and they wanted them featured so they can show them off too. Wow. That's awesome, man.
So I saw Jerry's shop. We shot a couple bikes. We went and had dinner, went back to the airport, got on the plane and flew back home.
It's cool, man. That is a great story.
That was like, I was just like, okay.
After years of
Kind of ruined me for travel for a few months.
certainly. Yeah.
Hey guys, the show will be back in 1 minute right after a word from our sponsor.
Hey, One Gang, tired of feeling like your butt's taking more of a beating than your bike on those long rides? Introducing Butt Buffer, the ultimate solution to saddle soreness. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. These cushions are made from medical-grade viscoelastic polymer, scientifically crafted to eliminate pressure points and keep your circulation flowing. No more numb nuts or numb butts. And here's the best part. Butt Buffer cushions are made right here in the US for the last 30 years. From Harleys to Hondas, we've got a cushion to fit your ride perfectly. Plus, with styles ranging from sleek pebble polymer to luxurious sheepskin, there's a butt buffer for every rider's style. Get your butt buffer today at buttbuffer.com. That's buttbuffer.com. Your butt will thank you, and you'll ride longer and happier. We've got your butt covered.
Well, Howard, at S&S, you managed everything from service manuals to media, production, branding. I'm sure I'm leaving some things out. What did you learn during that first chapter about product-driven marketing versus editorial content?
The insight that I gained from the magazine on what people reacted to was how we started steering the S&S ads. And if we had old magazines and you could find old S&S ads, one of the things I really focused on was taking the parts that were hidden inside the engine and making them look like jewelry or something like
Wow.
that in the ads. And we used to do black background ads before everything was black in the industry. We did black background ads so we could make the parts reflect into the ad. So you'd be looking at a crankshaft or a clutch hub or a cam or something, but there was a faded reflection as if it was on a black piece of glass or something, like you would show jewelry. Right. And wow, if I put this in my bike, it's this cool, fancy. And because that's what appealed to people, because back then, the idea of customizing your bike, even from the inside of the engine, mattered. So I was like, you know what? S&S makes the best performance parts in the industry. Let's showcase them that way instead of just, hey, look, here's the cam, here's a carburetor, here's something. We made them look special, and people reacted to it because now it was, even though that cam was inside the engine and it wasn't a billet gas cap that everybody could see, they could show the ad, go, the cam I put in, and it looked fancy.
Yeah, that was cool. Hey,
so it was
sorry.
treating, no, it's okay. To answer your question, it was treating the product at the level or the value that you wanted it perceived as, not just, hey, here's some parts we sell.
Right.
And interestingly, when I went back to S&S now, I changed how we display everything. And if you're going to come to the show that we're going to be at this weekend, which will be after everybody hears this, but when you go to the S&S display, all of the parts are on display in jewel cases.
That's sick.
So a little black base and then a clear plexiglass box over it.
Nice.
So when you walk up, you're like, whoa, what is this? And we constantly get from people, well, can I pick that up? She can. We want you to see it. But that wow, look at this display of jewel cases and fancy and shiny. It's how you make billet M8 breathers look cool.
That's right.
Because if they're parts laying on a table, they're just a scattering of parts. If you showcase them, now I'm interested in them.
So that's where your skill set came from the magazine world now to the real touch and feel world, but still give it that glam, which is cool. So after S&S, you joined Multistack as a marketing communication director. How different was it to apply your skills in the industrial world, especially in a highly technical space like HVAC systems, compared to what you were doing?
So there's an interesting story connected to this as well. Multistack was run by a guy named Mark Platt. Mark and Brett Smith were very good friends. That's how I met Mark. And when I was leaving S&S, Mark offered me the position at Multistack. And I said, but Mark, I don't know anything about air conditioning. He says, well, what does air conditioning do? I said, well, air conditioning takes the heat out of a room. It doesn't actually, I knew that much, right? Air conditioning doesn't actually, it just takes heat out of the air. And he goes, you know everything you need to know. Oh, okay. So come do marketing here. And it was obviously a mind shift to going to a B2B business versus a B2C business. But conceptually, marketing is marketing, right? We have a cool new product. You want it. How can we remind you or tell you we have a cool new product and you want it? So we actually, Mark and I worked together on creating some campaigns and some things we did that shocked that industry by marketing Multistack as something cool, something different, something new.
Again,
we had done this one really cool ad that it really freaked people out, but we had a picture of one of the Multistack chillers and we had a picture of a violinist, and we had the dB levels for a violin performance and a Multistack chiller. And the violin was here and the Multistack chiller was here.
damn.
And we put that out in all the air conditioning magazines. And flooded with phone calls because, that's all. No, it's true. We've measured that. You're welcome to come to our factory and do your own tests. And it was like, wait a minute, chillers are noisy, So it was the same idea. How can you get people's attention with whatever the product is?
Awesome.
But where that gets interesting is currently the chairman of the board of S&S is Mark Platt, who used to run OpenStack. So I worked with Mark years ago, and now I worked with Brett years ago. Brett's on the board of directors now. So I'm back working with two people that were very instrumental in my career.
That's crazy how everything spins around like that.
Yeah. So, and then you worked internationally too, launching programs in Brazil and Jordan. What did stepping onto the global stage teach you about branding across cultures?
We just translated everything.
That's it.
I mean, really, we knew what we had was working.
Okay.
So we basically just translated it and let that message go there as well, because that's the message of multi-stack, right? So if we start changing the message, well, why is it different here than there? Because what if you're a customer that runs a business in the States and runs a business somewhere else?
Right.
What if you're a multinational? Why are you telling me two different things?
Yeah.
So we stuck to the same marketing, same as back in my first time with S&S when we were creating ads for Japanese magazines. We literally took the exact same ad and just translated it because it's the same message that needed to go forward.
How did that work though? If you're in I mean, you have nuance in different languages. When you guys translated, were you using an actual Japanese, for example, an actual Japanese
translator? Back then we would use not a Google Translate, but a person to make sure that it was done properly.
Right. And then do you have somebody to kind of cross-examine that translator? That's a great idea for a competitor to plant.
Now we hired people that were bilingual and fluent in the industry through recommendation.
Very cool. Okay.
Hey, this person. So we checked ourselves before we did it, but we knew we were on the right path with it.
Right.
That's cool. So here comes Sasco, where you built basically an entire marketing department from scratch. Another role that you took on. How do you go about doing that? And what's the first thing do you think that companies usually overlook when trying to market themselves?
Sasco was a 1-year job for me. That was basically, I wanted to get back to California. They wanted a marketing department. They didn't have one. I had marketing skills and knew the commercial construction industry because of multi-stack. But when I got there, it turned out they wanted a dog and pony show where when they would bring customers in, they would bring me into the meetings to talk about all the great marketing we were going to do. And I'd present all the ideas and the customer would sign the contract and they're like, yeah, or we're not going to do any of this. So
God, that's crazy.
God.
I didn't stay there. I didn't stay there. It's a very successful, very, very, very successful electrical construction company. They do amazing work and they have amazing clients, and they just felt like they needed marketing. And then they were like, yeah, we're doing this without you really doing anything. And I was like, so you're just going to pay me to show up for meetings and stuff and occasional press releases? Yeah. I was bored out of my mind. And I just, as soon as I found another job, I was like, see ya.
Yeah. Makes sense. At least you got back to California. So
yeah, exactly.
Right on. So then at PAPS Association, you did a full creative agency restructure, video photography, client campaigns. What part of the process did you most enjoy, building systems or creating content?
Oh, all of that work was done for Kawasaki. So it was creating the content because we were creating all the imagery for the website and the brochures, the commercials, the photo shoots with all the new models, in studio stuff. And that was a tremendous amount of fun.
That sounds like it was.
And it was, I got to see the newest bikes months before anybody else saw them.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love
Couple trips,
Kawasaki. Yeah, that's my favorite out of the Japanese brands anyway. So,
couple trips to
um,
Japan for that stuff. So it was a pretty cool thing to do. But the killer part of that was I couldn't talk about anything.
oh,
Couldn't tell my friends what I was doing. Couldn't share anything with anybody because I was 6 months ahead of the world seeing things.
right. That's
Like,
crazy.
what do you know? Well, we're going to Fallbrook, California for a photo shoot. For what? Can't tell you. Well, what's going to be that? Can't tell you. And, massive NDAs with the talent that were going to be riding the bikes and stuff like that. And
Right.
that was, I had the Bostrums riding Kawasaki's because they were available as riders. I had Jason Britton doing stunts on some of the bikes and Ricky Gadsden. Like, I had all those guys that worked with Kawasaki that were doing photo shoots, and I couldn't talk about
Man,
it.
that had to have been
That
torture.
sucks. That sucks. That's tough for somebody who loves to present that to the world to be able to do, because you're in it and you're passionate about it. So take us a little bit into the Tucker Rocky moment when you transitioned there after that.
So they were looking for a brand manager, brand director, whatever it was, for one of their apparel lines.
Mhm.
And I sent in a resume. I thought, that'll be fun. I know a little bit about apparel because I used to test apparel for the magazine. And I met with the hiring manager, who was Phil Davey, and we got along well. And I got told that the job was going to be taking River Road apart and creating a new brand called Black Brand. And that was going to be an upscale leather line to kind of step away from River Road, which was a price point product. River Road was tremendously successful,
Yes.
but it was viewed as just price point, not the greatest stuff in the world. And Tucker wanted to go to that next level. So Bill, who reported to Hank, who you mentioned earlier today, they said, okay, you're hired. Here's what you're going to do. We need a new brand released at our dealer show, and that's in like 7.5 months. Okay. I didn't know that it was impossible to do that. So because I didn't know that it was impossible, I just aggressively went after it and came up with some new designs, and Phil had some ideas, and I took some of Phil's ideas, and I worked with the manufacturer that they used overseas, and I had samples and air freight and all kinds of nuttiness, but we released Black Brand 7 months later, and it was a level above River Road, little better construction, little cooler styles, a lot of focus on technology and how turning riding apparel into more functional so that more people would wear it. Like all those pictures back there, all me, right? I only ride helmet, jacket, gloves, boots because I don't want to die. So I wanted to make apparel that would appeal to people and maybe they would wear more of it. Side note, there's one photo in existence of me riding without gear. And it's Ron Sims and I riding next to each other on a back road in Sturgis for the back page of his catalog that year. He's like, you're going to ride. And I'm like, okay. And I put all my gear on. He goes, well, you can't do that in my catalog. And we were coming down a road where, following pickup truck with a photographer in the back. And I was like, all right, I'll. And when that catalog came out, I got inundated with phone calls from people.
Fine.
Oh, look at you riding without gear. Side note to that, if you ever find that photo, which is actually on my social media somewhere, if you ever want to like doom scroll through all
check it
my
out
social
for sure.
media, you will notice that Ron and I back in 1990, whatever that was, maybe 2000, are wearing white leather high tops on our feet, which was 20 years before Sons of Anarchy was ever thought of, and white leather high tops and all of that. So
you guys are the original anarchists.
Ron and I always make jokes about, copying everything we do right down to the sneakers.
That's fun.
That's so funny. Man.
So anyway, so Black Brand got launched, and it was fun. And then I enjoyed it quite a bit, but internal politics, and that's the nice way to say it, internal politics. Somebody got promoted that shouldn't have really been promoted within the organization, and he convinced the higher ups that Black Brand should get killed and all the emphasis should go on these two other brands that they had. And I was, well, this is getting nutty. So I found another job and I left.
There you go. All right. So,
and shortly thereafter, they killed Black Brand.
Man, that's a bummer. Internal politics immediately makes me cringe. So after Tucker, you entered a completely different game at the MiTek USA, working on commercial solutions, safety products, and cross-functional global campaigns. What was the biggest surprise you encountered working outside of the motorcycle industry?
Days off.
Days off?
Answer.
You had days off?
MiTek is a division of Berkshire Hathaway. So it's very, very, very corporate run. And every holiday that there is, MiTek was closed, and unlimited PTO and all the like, wow, this is something new.
Nice.
I get a holiday off. I don't have to work a weekend to be at a trade show. It
Foreign concept.
It was amazing. I mean, it was a phenomenal career. I got to experience, some of the cool things that the different companies that I represented did. World Trade 1 and 4 in New York, the glass that was on the outside of that building was done by Benson, which was one of the companies that I worked with. Unbelievable number of hospitals throughout the seismic region, which is where earthquakes happen, were built with Side Plate, which was one of the companies I worked with. Just really cool stuff and really different level of doing things. And I was very fortunate. I was on a senior leadership team there that ran one of the divisions, and I got to really have a lot of say in website look and marketing and how we were going to present ourselves at trade shows and things like that. And it was, again, at a very, very corporate high level, which took a while for me to get used to the idea that, wait, I don't have to scramble, and if I need more help, go get more help.
You got teams, right?
Yeah, and the days off, like I had every major holiday off. It's crazy.
So after you finished there, the next step is basically part 2 of S&S, correct? So when you left you went there.
So
take us into how all that transpired and what happened.
People that are in the industry will understand and know how it worked. I stayed in touch. I was always friendly with Brett and Mark. Brett Smith, Mark Platt.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Hedaya and I had known each other since I started at Hot Rod Bikes magazine, Hot Rod Harleys. So stayed in touch with Charlie that whole time because we worked together at S&S back in my first time. I did a lot of stuff with Charlie directly when I was doing hot bike into S&S projects. Charlie was a key person in all of that. So Charlie and his wife come out to Vegas for dinner with us because they were doing something else. And Nancy, my girlfriend and fiance, whatever we call each other, met Charlie and his wife, Krista, for dinner. And I'm like, well, what are you doing out here? And he's like, I'm going to the AIM show. I'm just checking some stuff out for people. And I said, but you work for a car company. He goes, yeah, but I'm doing some consulting for people. And, we're talking, and he's mentioning S&S, have you seen what's going on at S&S? And you see, it's just, it's a shame. This is going wrong and that's going wrong. And I'm like, yeah, It is. It's sad. It's not what we left.
Right.
And, then we went out and spent some time around Vegas, and that was that. And about a month and a half or so later, Brett Smith and his wife are in Vegas. And we get together and go to dinner, and Brett says to me, man, I would love to get the band back together one day. And running down the list of people that we used to work with, and I was like, nah, I don't know, Brett. I don't know that we could ever really get that group and that dynamic back together. I don't know. I think we're older. We've all transitioned a little bit. About 4 or 5 weeks after that, I get a phone call from Brett and Mark. What would it take for you to come back to S&S?
Nice.
No, I'm not moving to Wisconsin. Sorry, I did that once. I hated it. Well, what if you didn't have to move?
Ooh.
Then conversation changed. A couple of weeks after that, I get another phone call, and it's Charlie, Brett, and Mark. Charlie has now gone back to work at S&S. He's like, dude, you got to come back. And I'm like, Berkshire Hathaway, days off. It's really cool. I don't have to work that hard.
Yeah.
Going back to work, I'm going to have to work really
What a lie.
hard.
What a lie.
You guys told me everything that's wrong, and that's a lot of work, and I'm old now. And I get on the phone a couple days after that with Mark Platt, and he's like, send me an email with what it would take for you to come back to S&S. I said, Mark, I'm not moving. He said, well, what if you just had to come back to S&S, for meetings that are important, board meetings, or at least 1 week a month to meet with your team and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I could do that. So I put together a list of my non-negotiables, and Brett and Mark got on the phone, and we walked through all of them. And it was really interesting. So the Drag Specialties MVP show was coming around on September 7th of last year. September 6th was my last day at MiTek. I got up in the morning, sent a couple emails out to make sure people knew projects that I was closing out or handing off to them were all squared away. Shut my computer down, put it in the box they had sent me, took it to FedEx, shipped it back to MiTek, went home, packed a suitcase, got on a plane, flew to Milwaukee. Charlie picked me up at the airport that night, and we had dinner, talking. The next morning, Charlie and I showed up at the MVP show, and people freaked out. Charlie and Howard are back at S&S.
Nice.
In the S&S booth, and Mark.
That must have felt good, right? That must have felt good that people
it was incredible. Like, wait, you two are back?
Right.
Are you gonna do this? Are you gonna do this? Are you gonna do that? And it was this great buzz of excitement. And Charlie and I on Sunday, it was really funny. We took a break, and we're having some lunch, and we're kind of looking around. And I looked at Charlie and I said, when did we become the old guys in this industry?
It creeps up on you.
Because it was, 20 years before we were these guys running around trying to make all this stuff happen at S&S. And so that was it. It was Mark and Brett and Charlie really wanted me to come back and really believed in what I could do and supported all the changes that I wanted to make when I got back. And again, I come back to that blessed word, right? I work really hard. My team that's based in Wisconsin, the three guys, Caleb, Cody, and Matt, they work their butts off, but we get a lot of stuff done, and we've changed the perception of S&S in the market again, and it's exciting.
It's amazing. What a change. What a difference. And anybody who has followed the S&S world for a long time, who's been in this industry a long time. I mean, there was a time where I was afraid S&S was going to fold and close its doors, man. Right after COVID, I mean, we were doing a lot of builds, so we were buying a lot of motors at my shop. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we couldn't get anything from them, and we were contacting them and like leaving messages, and people aren't returning calls. I mean, I was like, what the hell is going on? And then I got worried. I thought one of my favorite companies, US made companies of all time, was really and the era where you were there, and now over the last year, you can just, I mean, anybody who's in the industry can see there's a difference in the way S&S is now compared to 2 years ago.
Yeah. And, again, I, I don't, I never want it to sound like, oh, look at what I did. But, again, blessed that those 6 guys decided to participate in our vintage tour program.
Yeah.
Because that, when we unveiled that in Daytona this year, that said to the industry, look, S&S is back to doing what they do.
Absolutely.
Right? Because 2 knuckleheads, 2 panheads, 2 shovelheads, and radically different bikes, just crazily different, and showing off S&S stuff. And
So
I remember standing in the booth talking to people in Daytona, and people going, I had no idea you guys made these old engines.
Oh yeah.
Like, we've been making these old engines since these engines were new.
That's
And,
right.
and it's that. So now one of the big challenges is reaching out to a new audience of riders that maybe didn't grow up in the other Harleys and maybe bought their first Harley as one of these M8 bikes that don't necessarily know S&S because S&S was a little absent for a few years in the market.
They were.
That's sort of our big push now. And again, I can't thank those 6 guys enough for being part of that revitalization. Shameless S&S plug here. Those 6 bikes, I mentioned how the internet is a 60-second thing. We got their permission and we built a set of posters of those 6 bikes that people can buy, because you can't even get motorcycle posters anymore because they're not in the middle of magazines and they're not trade shows where people are giving away posters anymore, because everything, scan this QR code and look at this. So
Right.
we created these beautiful 6 posters, 18 inches by 24 inches. So big enough that it's really cool to start getting people to put some stuff back on their garage walls, right? Start getting some inspiration for,
I love that.
what could you do?
Bringing it back to old school, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just, one of the things that Brett tasked me with that was very important was getting a new catalog out. We hadn't done a real catalog in 10 years. And all credit in the world to Caleb on my team. Caleb managed getting the catalog put together with help from 20 people within S&S that had application knowledge and part awareness and all that. But we got a 552-page catalog last year.
That's wild.
Just incredible. And the industry reaction to seeing that catalog again, people are just excited to get one because everything's digital now. And so, as you know, from running a shop, right, on a busy Saturday when people are at your counter and the phones are ringing and the guy's like, I need a carburetor. When you can spin that great rack of catalogs around and open it, the page with the S&S E or G carb, and let them read that while you're answering a phone to answer a question for a customer.
Nothing like it. Yeah.
You can't do that with your computer because all your pricing is in the computer.
Right.
Yep.
So
right. You can't show the wholesale in the retail.
Look at this while I take this phone call. I'll be right back to you.
Yep.
And the customer will flip the couple pages of catalog waiting for you to get off the phone. But
that's right.
You can't do that with a QR code.
Yeah. So to go back chronologically slightly, S&S had just gone through some major shifts, and right before you'd come back, as a VP, what were some of your first moves as VP of marketing to bring clarity and momentum back to the brand?
It was I don't want to hate to talk poorly about people, but they weren't focused on what core product that mattered to customers. And if you go back and look at S&S ads and social from when I got there till now, certainly there's news and stories and things like that, but most of our material that we push out is part focused, part information, relevant to the people that have that motorcycle or things like that brand. Like we do some stuff with Indy and we do most of our stuff with Harley. And it's that, how do I tell them about the part, and how do I tell them enough information about the part to get them interested to go talk to their dealer about it? Because I want them to go in and talk to the dealer.
Of course.
The internet is great, but the dealer is going to be able to seal the deal and answer all the questions. So we focus on the parts that matter, or, you know, whether it's something simple like compensator sprocket, or it's our aluminum manifold to replace a plastic manifold on a V twin, which is just insane to me that a manifold and a fuel rail might be plastic in between the heat of a V series engine, right? So the fuel rail, the manifold, then reminding people we do carburetors because, you know,
the best
motor's been fuel injected for a really long time, but guess
best
what?
carburetors ever, man.
There's millions of motorcycles that still use carburetors out there.
That's right.
So, you know, it's that focus on real application of parts. And the other thing we're trying to do, which it's coordination with our R&D team, is whenever there's a performance part that comes out, we want to show it with an actual dyno chart, but instead of being obtuse in the dyno chart, we're very specific. So this bike was not only equipped with the HPT 496 cam, but it also had this exhaust and this air intake. So we're not trying to create that, you know, oh, our cam does. No, our cam, when it's got proper air intake and proper exhaust, creates this.
Right.
And it's being honest with the consumer, highlighting the parts that matter. And that's been our focus. And it's worked very well. We've heard from a lot of people that they're very happy with where we're going with what we're presenting. So we feel good about that.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. And so you've done other things like you've relaunched the dealer catalog, restored builder partnerships, and brought back cultural relevance to S&S. What part of that process means the most to you personally?
Absolutely. The tour, the builder tour.
Cool. Thought you could say that.
That, because again, 6 guys that didn't need to buy engines from us and then lend us a motorcycle from Daytona to Sturgis so we could show off their work.
So cool.
Right. That commitment. And again, if you look at those 6 guys, right? Chip and Mikey from San Diego Customs. Right?
Awesome.
They're little shop in San Diego that has a great following, but they're pretty far from S&S. Right?
Yeah.
Mike Beland, who, you know, everybody knows drag races everything, right? Puts together his version of the bike. Xavier Muriel, who I was texting with Xavier this morning. I teased him about being my rock star friend that I want to show off to people. You know, he's in Texas, right? Brian Clark, who I know you guys had on your show, and Chris Allen, who both live next door to each other in South Dakota, you know, all fancy custom builders. And then there's Kevin Bass, right?
Yeah.
And a great story about Kevin Bass's bike. We unveiled everything in Daytona, and the night before we set up all the bikes, that morning before we opened the booth up, I was there with some spray detailer and some rags, and I was trying to make sure the bikes looked their absolute best for the unveiling. And I'm spraying spray detailer on Kevin's engine and wiping it, and I can't get the dirt off it. And then I look closer and I realize the dirt is clear coated to his motor. It's going to make it look even that much older. So of course, when I saw him that day and I told him that, he's like,
That's so fun.
Great, Kevin. I ruined the rags.
That's so
the heads up.
Hey, yeah. So looking back at every phase, basically, you got the magazines, the HVAC, construction, now S&S. What do you think the common thread that's run through your whole career has been?
I'm not afraid to try something new, and I have enough confidence in myself to believe I can do everything I've tried to do.
Yeah.
It's arrogant as all hell, but I've proven it along that whole way from when I was this dumb kid in Philadelphia that decided I was going to work on a motorcycle magazine.
Right.
I'm 3,000 miles away from the magazine world. I don't know anyone. I don't know anything. I don't know how it works, but I decided I was going to do it. And I went and did it. Right. Black brand. They said, you need to have a brand launched in 7 months. Well, everybody that worked in that knew it couldn't be done. I didn't know that. I got it done.
You weren't limited.
So the most, and I tell this to a lot of people, don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to fail and get back up, because you're never going to learn anything if everything just works out.
That's right.
Right. And I had a couple places that I worked that I really liked until I saw politics getting in the way. And I was, okay, I'm going to leave before this all collapses. And I did in every case. And in every case, when I saw it happening and I went and did something dramatically different, that thing that I was working on a year or two later collapsed.
So maybe
Outside of selfishly speaking, outside of media print, of course, from your earlier days, in my opinion, you are the right man for the job, for the best company. And I think, I don't know. I just think like that circle back around, how, you know what I mean? Like how life takes you this crazy journey and look where you end up. And now S&S Cycle is starting to rise again. And I love seeing that, because it's if you're an American and you love the motorcycle industry, S&S Cycle is such a big part of it. And to see that happening is just awesome with you there.
But please don't think that's because of me.
No, I know it's the whole team. I'm just saying.
Diet back. Jeremy Gilbert is back. Aaron Whitney is back. Justin Bramstead is back. Steve Rominski is back. There's
a lot of the OGs. Yeah, the OGs coming back.
And then with that group back, people like Jeff Bailey, who's our core product engineer, vice president, he has pressure off of him because he has the right people there to help the company go where it needs to go. I don't want anybody to ever think, oh, Howard's back, everything at S&S is better.
No. That's not what I meant. I just meant like it's just great to have you in
I don't
that
ever
seat.
want you to think that with like, you know, there's people there that without them, I couldn't do what I do.
Yep. Absolutely.
And it's a wonderful team that's there right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hank Desjardins said he's glad you're back at SSS. Serge mentioned this earlier, but he said to keep Charlie and Aaron in line, ... he'll get it.
Yeah. Well, Hank, Charlie, Aaron, and I all worked at Tucker at one time together. So
that's right.
That's so cool. All right. So you had to adapt to every kind of platform: print, web, events, social media, even global sales tracking. Speaking of the translations earlier, how do you stay fresh and evolve your strategy in an ever-changing media landscape?
You don't.
Okay.
You take what works and you simply adapt it to whatever platform it needs to be on. Right? You don't. If you're constantly trying to reinvent, your core message is going to scatter everywhere.
Right.
Right. S&S's message is very simple. Right. Made in the USA, family owned, quality since 1958, focused on proven performance. I can apply that to print. I can apply that to social media. I can apply that to branding that we display. I can apply that to the t-shirts we create. Right? It's very core focus. And when you start, okay, well, I have to do it this way for this, and I have to do it that way for that, and I have to do it, the focus goes away. And whether it was industrial air conditioners, commercial construction, you take your core message and you stay true to that, and you simply make it work on whatever kind of platform you're putting it out on. And that's, I feel like people get caught up in, oh, well, this is the new way to do this. And, oh, this is the new way to, you have a product, Your goal was to get people to buy your product from your dealers.
Yep.
And how are you going to help facilitate
Right.
that? Educate the customer. Whatever way you need to educate the customer, educate your dealers. Make sure your dealers knows when the customer comes in. It's really simple marketing, and people make it very complex.
Agreed. Bring it back. What would you say? KISS, right? Keep it simple,
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah, it's
So, so, and finally, for younger creatives, brand managers, or even marketeers out there, what's the biggest myth about this industry that you want to set straight?
Focus on the customer. Stop. Don't get caught up in friends and this and that. Try your best to know the customer, right? When you go to a show, great to see all the fancy stuff in the booths and everything. Go to the parking lot. Look at the bikes in the parking lot. Look at what people are doing on the bikes they ride every
great
day.
advice.
That's your market. The custom bikes are one thing, right? The show bikes and all that, amazing. The industry needs them for the level of excitement they create. But the parking lot is where you learn.
Howard, that's so funny that you just said that, because I'm going to tell you a pretty great story from Bike Week this past year. I went to the Dave Perowitz paint show, custom paint show, to see the work and just kind of chat with Dave, see get him on the podcast, all this stuff, right? So as I'm coming out with my wife and we're walking to my bike, I've got a custom Road King, and I got a Clocks windshield on my Road King. Guess who's out in the parking lot? Brian.
Oh,
And he's checking out all the bikes that have clocks, and he's taking pictures. And that's how I met him for the first time ever, and just bullshitted with him in the parking lot and said, "Hey man, would you be interested in coming on the podcast? I consider you one of the legends of the industry and one of my personal heroes that I've looked up to, because you've always done things the right way." And he was like so gracious and so kind. But what you just said, by going out into the parking lot instead of being in the booth, go see what's out there. And that's exactly what he was doing. That's so funny, man, that you said that. Yeah, crazy. So, hey, where can people follow you? And if there's anything that you guys have coming up, you want to throw out to the audience, please do.
well, my social media is pretty simple. It's my name. It's just Howard Kelly. I got in early on all the social media, so I was able to get it as my name. My stuff's boring. It's just my life. The S&S Cycle, SS Cycle is where all the cool stuff happens.
Right.
And coming up, by the time this airs, our custom bikes, the vintage tour bikes, will be at Mitchell, South Dakota for the big Free Sturgis kickoff party.
Nice.
Then they will be in Sturgis at our booth at Black Hills Harley-Davidson, to be announced next week, which will be a couple weeks before this airs. We will be sponsoring a charity ride with our custom builders on August 2nd.
Okay.
That will be from our booth in Black Hills out to a place that I'm not going to mention right now, but it's a chance to ride with those 6 guys, and we will be raising money for our favorite charity, which is Tunnel to Towers.
Yeah, I saw that. Those T-shirts you guys printed are killer.
So, yeah, and those T-shirts, if anybody wants to buy one, benefits Tunnel to Towers. That's the charity we want to work with. So we have that charity.
We're gonna link all that
on.
to the show notes, where they can click directly to you guys and purchase T-shirts. So.
Right on. So that charity ride, all the details will be out on S&S Cycle and on our social media. And then really great opportunity to meet those 6 guys, spend some time with them, go for a ride with them, and full day in Sturgis. And then
That's killer.
shortly after that, after Sturgis, it'll be all hands on deck planning our 26 promotion, which is going to be really cool, because now that we show the industry the vintage tour, next year will be something a little different.
More new stuff. Yeah, for the M8s. Yeah, probably.
And there
That's
may be an international thing coming up soon, but I can't talk about it yet. So,
So awesome.
Right.
So awesome. It's so good to see S&S in this scene, man. I love it. Great job to your whole team, to the whole, every guy and gal that walks in that door every single day, or, you know, that does whatever they do. You guys have finally, it's so good to see. So, all right, my man, the questions you went through like a champ. Now the speed round comes. So now we're going to get your quirky side. So here's the deal. We put 2 minutes on the clock. If you don't make the 2 minutes, you send Ben and I a signed S&S picture to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, and we get to hang it back here in our office from you. And other than that, well, let's have some fun. Ben, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. All right. Best motorcycle. We have a very expensive budget, as you can see for the podcast.
Yeah.
So everything is perfect. So, all right. Question 1. Best motorcycle you have ever ridden or owned?
Toss up between my '01 Dyna FXDXT that I built using every cool component there was. I did, in my opinion, I did one of the first really cool Dynas when everybody said, "Yeah, Dyna, why would you do that?"
Right.
That was like 125 horsepower, 130 foot-pounds of torque. It was stupid
Damn.
cool.
You still have it?
No, I sold that. Second to that, shockingly, is my new Pan America. I am absolutely in love with that bike.
I hear great things about it, man. I haven't heard many. They said the only drawback they said is it's not a super great off-road bike. It's a great touring bike with a little
but you
bit
know
of
what?
like sand.
I'm going to knock out 1,000 miles in 2 days on that bike to get to Sturgis next month. So
Killer, man. Killer. All right, good. Enjoy it. All right. Something people may not know about you that you're good at.
listening. Yeah.
Listening. Okay.
Most
Good
people
one.
think I talk too much, but I listen very intently. And
Well, with your
I
fiance
always-
agree?
yeah, and
Alright.
I always remember what people talked about, and I can bring it back up to them.
Gotcha. All right, cool. All right. Best builder you've ever seen work in person. It's okay. Nobody's going to get hurt feeling wise. I mean, just somebody who really blew you away.
Again, like I've had the privilege of having a personal relationship with Arlen Ness, with Jesse, with Dave Perlowitz, with Donnie Smith, with everybody
So
in
many
between,
legends.
Matt Hodge, all of them. And all of them in their own way are the best because each one of them is known for something. So I can't.
Gotcha.
I
No, good.
absolutely can't.
That's a good neutral political answer. Good job.
Not
All right,
even
ready?
political, it's factual.
Factual. I meant to say. What's more stressful, a product launch or a magazine deadline?
Magazine deadline.
Okay. If you could bring back one motorcycle trend from the past, what would it be?
Magazines.
I was hoping you'd say that. Dream ride, bucket list destination still left to ride for you.
I think, again, pretty much been across the country, been almost everywhere on a motorcycle, probably something internationally. I went to Rio de Janeiro once for a vacation, and similar to Asia, that the traffic lights, all the motorcycles just kind of come up to the front, but they're all, 125, 250 little things.
Wow.
And I would love to go back to Brazil with just a tweaked out like 250 or 350 cc something, just a little faster than everything, and just race away from all the traffic lights with everybody.
I'm hearing that's cool. I like that. Favorite American V-twin engine of all time?
Twin Gam.
No hesitation.
What do you do to
When you get the
relax
valve
from?
train aligned,
go ahead.
the motor works way better.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure. What do you do to relax from the grind?
I have 3 hobbies in my life. I ride motorcycles, which I still find to be fun and relaxing, even as crazy it is here in Vegas. I was blessed to be able to afford at one point in my life a Dodge Challenger Hellcat with a 6-speed. So When I take that out, it's stupidly entertaining because it's really hard to keep it in a straight line because 700 horsepower and a stick shift. And I go to the range and I shoot. And those are my 3 hobbies, which are all expensive and require a lot of cleaning. It just worked out that way.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. Good answer. Best part of being back at S&S Cycle.
Absolutely being back with the team. Absolutely.
More
Knowing
fun to
there's
work. Oh, sorry.
No, just knowing there's a group of people that know how to get stuff done and can lead the other people that have been there for a long time that were led in a different direction, leading them back to being S&S that we know. That's absolutely the best part.
Awesome. More fun to work with, designers or engineers?
Engineers.
If you could have dinner with one person, past or present, who would it be?
Don't know. God.
God?
I have a lot of questions. I have a lot.
Yeah. You got a lot of explaining to do. All right. What's the most underrated part brand in the industry right now? In your opinion?
That's
Is that kind of a loaded, impossible question?
Because
all right. How about I'll rephrase it.
By segment.
What part are you? What new part that maybe let's go with that S&S. What new part that S&S is coming out with that you're really pretty stoked about?
No offense to my friends that work at Harley, but all the things that get changed on an M8, from the oil control valve to the fuel rail to the manifold to the compensator sprocket to the breathers,
they're all S&S parts.
it's all stuff that makes an M8 work properly.
Right.
That to me is exciting because you're spending all that money on that bike and you have all these potential issue parts that you can replace and get that much more enjoyment out of the bike.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Of course. Okay. Your playlist is stuck on one artist for the next 100 miles. Who are you hoping it is?
The Doors.
Nice. All right. If you weren't in motorcycles, what totally different industry would you be crushing it in?
Oh, commercial construction, obviously.
Okay. Good one. Last one. One word that sums up your journey through this wild ride of a career.
Blessed.
Killer. Nice. That's great. Well, you finished up. I apologize. 2 minutes and 1 second though. So we do get that signed photo from S&S and to the show. So be awesome. But hey, in all sincerity, man, thank you so much for taking the time. We know Ben and I both know how little time you have available. So for you to give us an hour and a half, 2 hours of your time, and the audience get a chance to get to know an incredible man in this industry. So been our honor. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts.
Thank you guys both. It's very enjoyable being here and I appreciate it.
Was ours.
And we'll see you on Saturday at the Born Free show.
Yes, sir.
I will be there.
Can't wait.
All right.
Thanks,
awesome.
Howard.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.